Okay, so I figured I'll just do a quick talk about distilled water and some of the things that I've been just thinking about as I've been doing my daily routine. Just a moment. Okay, so this is distilled water from a home distilling system, a countertop home distilling system. I'll show you the This is an example of a countertop distiller, okay? You see this? There's a plug for the lid to plug into the base where the water drips into. There's let's see. So, see, there's the base, the lid comes off, and then the water distills in there. And of course, there's plenty of sediment in there right now. I could just show you an example because everybody's situation is different. Where they live, the water is different. And here, the water is highly mineralized, and it's from our well. And it's high in sulfur content. So I do like to filter it because, well, someone once disclosed to me about a military base that's not far from here that they had contaminated the groundwater with dumping their chemicals. And, well, you know, that's just one example. Another example I'll share with you. So that, you know, I'll go on about that in just a moment, but this is how I store the water in glass bottles. I try to keep enough so if we have a power outage, we have plenty of clean water for whatever needs we have. And I have two of these countertop distillers in the house right now. And they're working for our needs. Everybody has to figure out their own situation, and I have gone through using all the many different systems of purifying water, and I gave up on my crappy Berkey, and I gave up on my that thing filled up with slime and so many problems with the filters and the huge expense, and it was less effort to have the distillers than that Berkey, in my opinion. If you don't clean that chamber out where the filters are, and that's a lot of work on a regular basis, and you don't clean your filters, then you're drinking all kinds of slime and who knows what. Anyhow, so I was thinking about, you know, my time when I worked in Atlanta. I was recalling working in the PACU. That's the post-anesthesia care unit, where people were exiting the operating room, and I was a recovery nurse in that capacity at that time, in that job. That was in 2008 that I'm recalling. That was just prior to me getting very ill and not being able to work. After my last set of toxic poisonous vaccines. Okay, that I had for my work, that I had to do, that I had done without question prior to that. never again. So I was working, and I got introduced to the patient population in that facility that was suffering with bladder cancers. And of course, you know, you get exposed to directly to the procedures and the people and how things are done through a desensitization and compartmentalization process within the industry. And of course, only the people that are willing to go along and desensitized and just willing to just do the job, those are the only people that stay in those positions, because otherwise, you know, they get filtered out, weeded out, or they leave of their own volition. So I remember, I'll just give one case. This man came out after having radiation beads inserted into his, surgically inserted into his bladder to radiate his bladder and the cancer. Of course, that radiates his whole body. Radiation. 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 Go look it up. I wasn't protected properly. So this is what happens next. The patient gets wheeled in and under sedation with their endotracheal tube in place in front of me in an intensive care setting, and I've got to extubate the person, remove the endotracheal tube, make sure that they're breathing, empty out the bladder contents with the radiation and the urine and the blood into bags that go into vessels that I then had these big gloves on as if that was protecting me, and like an apron. And I would take that radiated body fluids and blood and urine, and I would dump that down the main toilet system. That was the protocol. So we won't go into the fact that all kinds of people are taking all kinds of RX, all kinds of toxic drugs, all kinds of and varieties of over-the-counter junk, poisonous foods, antibiotics, steroids, and hormones. How many people are taking hormones? HCG, testosterone, progesterone, estrogens. They're pissing that all down the toilet. And if you live somewhere where the water is being fed to your home, I'm sorry to report this to you. You know, the fracking, that stuff is not getting cleaned out of the water. That stuff is being re-ingested, and we have a zombie apocalypse going on. Just saying. Have a great day. It's taken a lot to figure out how to survive. I've made it to 57. 57. Yep. 57. So I'm here to report some of the things that I've learned. So I'll just stick to this one thing right now because there's so many heaps of horrid things to say. Where does one begin? Where do we begin? Okay, so there. Oh, I met somebody when I lived down in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, and that person told me they had an invitation to go to the water cleaning facility, the city, okay? This was at a point where I started reading my yearly water report that I got from the corporate government and the facilities that are processing the water that's pumped to everybody's houses. So yeah, well, at the end of my water report, this was around 2010, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was living there at the time. On the water report, it actually says, at the end of the water report, in tiny little print, it reads, "This water should not be ingested by anyone that is immune compromised, the elderly, or babies. It is not safe." And in the report, there is mention of different heavy metals and toxins and parasites. Then, this person that went to go visit the water facility shared with me that they were shown something that was called the bullet, okay? So he went in, and it was a process that they go through these huge pipes that they have where the water goes to the these are the pipes from the water system that goes to the people. They get clogged up, so they have this bullet-shaped device that goes through it, zips through it, and it sort of sweeps through the pipe system and takes out sludge and junk. And he watched it, and he said when it goes through, the disgusting matter that comes out of there, and that's where the water travels through that reaches people. And it was filled with, what did he say? It was eels, E-E-L-S, you know, eels that have their babies there. They poop and they pee and they live in there, in the pipes. So I don't know what you're drinking. I don't know what you're drinking when you go to Starbucks or the airport, or what you're drinking in the bottled water with the plastic. The plastic. I had a blood test done. I had been traveling and I'd been drinking all kinds of water in plastic, like spring water. I figured I'll try to figure out how to manage when I'm traveling. I ended up going to the doctor having a blood test, and he just did different toxicity tests. I don't go to doctors anymore. I'm done with that. By volition. That would have to be by some kind of weird force of nature that would force that on me, because they don't really know what to do other than to poison and suppress and cover up and radiate and toxify and cut and chop. Ignorance. Okay, so where was I? You see, the water distiller, when I'm doing this every day, there's reason for that. And people, I had some young people show up here and say, well, how come you don't use other methods that are easier, like maybe the reverse osmosis. Why don't you use the Berkey filter? Okay, I've been through that. I've done all that for years. I did all that stuff. I even had a big water distiller. So this is where I'm at right now. And that's what I'm sharing with you here today. A little bit about the contamination of the water systems. Oh yeah, the plastic. So my bloodstream was filled with plastic molecules from the plastic bottles. What a weird world we live in. So this is the other distiller that I have here. Okay, that's the actual vessel that the water gets distilled into. And the other, fill it up anyway, so I want to plug it and show you. This is the other distiller that I have. So I have two of these, and I get by on that. You may be able to see, well, I have some water bottles here. You see, right here? Water bottles, a bunch of them. And I've got more water bottles up there. And then I've got containers. And we do have a huge tank filled with water that we can utilize for bathing and cooking. We do have a hand pump for the well that we have to have installed, but that's not, you know, the finance for that isn't in place right now. You know, for people that are trying to get their act together and live on the land, it's very expensive, and you know, it takes a lot of strength and effort to plant and garden, and also have the energy in older years to prepare all our own proper nourishing juices and meals, and have clean water and try to stay safe, out of harm's way, and try to live quality life for as long as possible so that we can make a positive difference in this world, because there is hope. There's always hope. Wherever there is another day and the sun rises, the people that are making a difference keep doing that. If you're in a place that you're stuck in a city with tap water and you have no choice and you have no clue what I'm talking about, start looking into it. Fluoride, chlorine, hormones, radiation, sludge, filth, parasites. There are so many reasons why people are not feeling well. We're living in a 5G soup of electrical frequencies that are not supposed to be here. That's why I can communicate like this, and boom, this can be on the internet and people can see it. So if we're going to be poisoned, we might as well use this technology to share the truth so that people can find their way to survival outside of the trappings of the matrix. And that has to do with a lack of intel, a lack of information, not knowing what to ingest, how to safely detoxify and cleanse the body, how to live, how to get back to the land. This property that we're living on was bought for what most people would pay for rent for a couple of years, okay? At the time that this property was acquired by my husband, nobody was interested in this because it's out in a little bit out of town, you know, kind of thing. But the towns are gradually spreading now because people are realizing when the shit hits the fan and they're stuck in town, in the city, they're like, oh man, this sucks. Okay. So I have the bottles here, and so I'm going to get on with some juicing, and maybe somebody's going to find the distillation water talk interesting. I don't know. It's been real. Ciao, Bellas.